Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5 o'clock. And at this time, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. At this time, council is in full attendance, so there's no regrets for tonight. And right now, council is going to pause to seek guidance. Now we're going to approve the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions?
I would like to add one addition. King's Transit is the reminder about survivorship.
Okay. That at 2.6.
Okay.
Would you mind speaking up? Deaf people at the back here can't hear you.
We're adding an item to the agenda, 4.2, King's Transit. Anything else? And motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved, Linda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The next is delegations presentations, and the first presentation for tonight is Brendan Gorham from Atlantic Fisheries Fund. Can I have a motion for Brendan to come forward?
I so moved.
Have a seconder?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brendan, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good evening. I'll start off by thanking Council for accepting the offer to come in and present on the Atlantic Fisheries Fund to Council. Coming here is one of a number of presentations I've been making on this topic in communities across Nova Scotia. So I'll jump right into the first slide here. This is information aggregated for all of Digby County from 2018, so it would include the town and also municipality of Clare. But as folks would know, there are many fish buyers, processors, and aquaculture facilities both in town and adjacent communities. A little over $120 million in reported purchases direct from harvest in 2018. And there are several major commercial wharfs in the municipality of Digby as well. So that's just setting the context. So what I'm here to speak about is the Atlantic Fisheries Fund, which is a funding opportunity for the fish and seafood sector in Atlantic Canada, but more particularly here in Nova Scotia. We are a party to the agreement with the 3 other Atlantic provinces and the Government of Canada. And my reason for coming here was to create awareness to Municipal Council, for your staff, for those in the area who are working on economic development files or activities, to help create some information and some momentum behind the fund. The purpose is to transform and drive innovation in our fish and seafood sector through innovative processes and technologies in harvesting, processing, and the aquaculture sectors, infrastructure and new technology investments to improve quality, productivity, and sustainability, and also to create some science partnerships to enhance knowledge and understanding of our changing oceanographic conditions. And provincial priorities are a key consideration. So as I referenced, it's a party multilateral between Canada and the provinces, but Nova Scotia and the Government of Canada have an agreement between the two around what our priorities are and the amount of funding that can go to Nova Scotia. So it's a cost-shared 70% federal, 30% provincial. It's a singular point of contact and application process for those interested, so you don't have to apply to both levels. The overall Atlantic fund is around $400 million over 7 years. Nova Scotia's portion is around 30% of that, so close to $120, $130 million that can only go to Nova Scotia fish, seafood companies, and by that I mean buyers, processors, exporters, shippers, harvesters, fishing vessels, shellfish growers, aquaculture facilities, marine plant companies, so a whole host of businesses. There's also a marketing pillar that's available for industry associations. So the reason for coming to a municipal council, I guess, like I said, was I see this as being mutually beneficial between the Atlantic Fisheries Fund and some of council's objectives for their community. Ultimately, if companies in your area, existing companies, or new entrant companies were to come invest in the area, then that will, be a benefit ultimately, hopefully, to your municipality. Non-commercial groups are also eligible for the fund, so that can be First Nations or Indigenous organizations or groups. Industry associations, so some of our harvesting groups could apply collectively. Research institutions or other NGOs that help support the sector. So on the program assistance side of things, there's a couple numbers to be aware of. If they're less than $100,000 ask of the fund, it's a non-repayable contribution. And if the ask is over $100,000, then it is repayable, or depending on the level of risk associated with the project, it can be conditionally repayable. And the amount available is from all government sources, and they're listed there for full-time equivalent employees. So less than 19, up to 80% assistance, 20 to 499, up to 75, and 500 or more, 50% assistance. So most of our entities in the fish and seafood business fit into the first two categories. Most, if not all, on the harvesting side, with the exception of some of the offshore vessels, would fit into the up to 80%. So in practical terms, if I was a harvester, I wanted to put a live well on my lobster boat to help improve quality and outcomes of my lobster fishing, and if that cost $60,000, I could apply to the fund for non-repayable assistance. Given the amount of vessels there are in Nova Scotia, there's 3,400 inshore lobster fishermen. For live wells, we've set a limit at $45,000 or 75% of the costs. But if you want to put a $60,000 live well into your boat, we could pay $45,000 non-repayable, and the harvester would pay $15,000. So some fairly beneficial terms there to promote quality of our fish and seafood products. Non-commercial groups, so organizations, are eligible for up to 80%, and this is based on the priorities, the level of risk, and the availability of other funding. I will say that we have announced around 35 projects to date in Nova Scotia. They've been announced and approved. I'm not able to give any details or specifics on any individual applications or groups or companies that have not yet been announced, but we have had some that were announced for associations that fit under this, particularly here in Southwest Nova. So the Coldwater Lobster Association was funded for an acoustic release fishing gear trial to help mitigate environmental and animal interactions. And the Southwest Lobster Science Society was funded for a project for bycatch monitoring in the lobster sector. So some eligible projects, I guess, on the, we're broken into three categories, as folks would know. Government loves their pillars when it comes to programs, and the number of those pillars are usually 3. So we have an innovation section of the fund. This is for stuff that is not quite yet adopted by the industry in a widespread way, but the technology's there. It may need tweaking, it may need trialing, it may need proof of concept in order to demonstrate the benefit to the sectors. So that can be for new products, new processes, or new technologies and equipment, bringing these to market, creating partnerships or networks that support innovation activity. So there might be something that it's cost prohibitive for one company to pursue, but if a collection of companies came together and might strengthen numbers or economy of scale to pursue a project, some of those areas would be around waste stream products or bycatch type things. And what we're looking for is productivity, increasing value, sustainability, and marketability. And I'll speak on each of those points on a subsequent slide. Probably our most popular one is on the infrastructure, or these are physical assets that are ready to use in a commercial operation. New technology, processes, or equipment to improve effectiveness and sustainability. We can also support the training associated with that. And once again, we're looking for some of the same things there: productivity, increasing value, sustainability, and market access. And lastly, on the science partnership piece, we're not seeking to duplicate the regulatory science that government should be doing, set quota or keep fisheries open. what we're looking at is some of the impacts of a changing ocean environment or changing ecosystem. So can we do some data collection, analysis, modeling, how, what might the fishery look like in the future, or where might the fish be, or, fill some gaps in some of the critical pieces of science around some of our major stocks. And like I said, we're trying to inform decisions of the future, technology transfer, and commercialize some of the great research that's going on right here in Nova Scotia. So we have a number of leading academic institutes in the marine and ocean sphere. But we also have, the NSEC is doing a lot on the applied side of things in Nova Scotia, and particularly in their Dartmouth campus around the ocean. And also COVE, so the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship in the old Coast Guard base in Halifax, so a new technology incubator or hub. So on some specific examples of what the fund can support, it's on the next slide, we'll show from the harvesting side of things, automated long lines or sustainable harvesting technology. So we recognize that finding folks to work on vessels or work in facilities is becoming a challenge in certain areas or certain times of the year or certain fisheries. So looking at ways to help ensure the businesses stay viable. Onboard handling equipment, that can be everything from live wells for lobster facilities to refrigerated salt water for crab fishing. It can be conveyors or on-vessel ice slurry systems or gutting technology for vessels. Those are some examples. One that we've seen is some trawl monitoring technology. This example is in the shrimp fishery, but this is technology or sensors on the trawls that show, what size you're getting, how full the nets are getting, to help minimize bycatch, environmental impacts, that sort of thing. On this technology, it's becoming more adopted here on the East Coast. It's very mainstream and well used in other sectors. And also test some alternative harvesting technologies for crab or lobster, like the example I gave previously. On the processing side, we use the term processing broadly to speak to the shore-based side of the seafood sector. So that's buying, processing, packing, shipping, exporting, that whole collection of businesses. Processing technology for efficiencies or automation. Pin boning machines, processing machines, filleting machines, packing, grading, sorting, any of those technologies. You look at the demographics or the labor challenges in the sector. We are not intending to displace laborers or workers in any way, shape, or form. We are looking to extend the employment season, make the work more, shift the hours a bit so it's more attractive to folks. Make the work so it's less labor intensive or less onerous on folks, less physically demanding, to try and address some of the chronic labor shortages that a number of studies have shown in our fish and seafood sector. The bottom one there, traceability and inventory management systems. These are becoming increasingly more important as our world markets diversify, as regulatory regimes try to align or come under scrutiny. Folks might recall seeing the article a couple of weeks ago out of the Northeast U.S. from a couple of their senators relating to our shellfish sector here in Nova Scotia and the possible impacts of the right whale situation. So this technology here can help demonstrate that fish are coming from a fishery that is well maintained, well regulated, but also can help with market access. We're fairly well positioned in Canada with a trade agreement with the United States. We have a trade agreement with the European Union. We currently do not have seafood tariffs imposed on us from China. We have trade agreements with other major leading Asian countries. So this type of technology or software can help ensure our product continues to get to market. On the aquaculture side of things, we've done some acquisition of automated grading equipment for oysters. So there was an announcement, and folks might have seen an article back in the late summer for an oyster farmer in the Argyle area, Eel Lake or Dion oysters. We're funded for a oyster grading technology, and it was also solar paneled. So it partnered with some green tech as well to help reduce the energy or power costs. We've done productivity and improvements in grow-out gear for shellfish aquaculture, so new ways of cultivating oysters or mussels for increasing productivity. And we've also adapted some new technologies to upgrade grow-out sites and hatcheries for shellfish and finfish. Particularly here in Nova Scotia, we've done a project with Wakeba First Nation to upgrade their hatchery located outside of Kentville, Nova Scotia. So that project focused on modernizing that technology so it was more of a recapture system as opposed to flow through on the river. So provincial area focus, the fund is open to harvesting, processing, and aquaculture companies. The projects must be innovative. What that means is to the company, basically. It doesn't need to be new to the world, something nobody's ever thought of, but if it demonstrates incremental benefits to the company or the harvester applying, it can fit that criteria. And we can look all around the world or elsewhere in Nova Scotia for stuff. So if you look to Cape Breton or Norway or Newfoundland or the West Coast, it doesn't matter where, we can adopt some of the best practices from around the world. For quality, the best that any fish or shellfish is going to be is when it's plucked out of the water. It's not going to get any better. That's as high quality as you're going to get. You can't create quality. You can maintain quality. So anything that maintains that quality to position our seafood is high value and product of choice. I already spoke on the traceability, but that has so many facets, not only for market access, but also just pure food safety. So we funded a project up in Pictou County for an on-site microbiological testing lab that will help cut down the recall time for that business if they had to do a product recall. So instead of sending their product off-site to test, if they got a recall, they would have had to pull a significant amount of production off the market. This tightens up that time frame. Like I said previously, increased value. If you look to Iceland, the fillet of the codfish is almost the waste product because they're getting such high value for the collagen, for the skin, for the enzymes from the digestive glands, from everything, that it's almost like the piece of fish that you eat is the low value afterthought of the codfish. So we're interested in thinking of projects that might incentivize our Nova Scotia companies to adopt some creative, outside of the box, not necessarily for human consumption products. I think there's a default thinking that all the fish or shellfish we harvest or catch or marine plants is going for humans to eat. And that's certainly important as global demand for protein, exists and expands, but also we might be losing value by only thinking in that manner. I spoke on productivity and efficiencies, but we want to increase people's profitability, but we're also interested in helping decrease their incremental cost of production. So other ways that we can find efficiencies, reduce energy costs, reduce safety, labor concerns to make the companies more successful. On the sustainable methods front, every week or every day, there's new stories emerging from the global marketplace around different challenges to the sector. But those challenges also create opportunities for Nova Scotia companies or Nova Scotia businesses to emerge as leaders in those fields. So our fund can help position our industry to address some of these growing global challenges. And I already spoke on the market access piece, but if we can't get our product to market, a lot of fish and seafood that we as Nova Scotians will have to consume. So in conclusion, I guess, as councillors who are in the communities, in where fishing industry is very important, with economic development folks, I've had the pleasure of working with Dan in the past on some projects, or just other folks who might see this presentation online and get to thinking about it. We have done some targeted outreach to a number of businesses in the municipality. We're going to be sending a mail out shortly in our 2020 license package to the businesses on the Fisheries Fund. We're trying to create awareness, help position it so that we don't miss out on this opportunity. So this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for our fish and seafood sector to adopt some innovative, modern, updated practices. And we want to make sure we have some success stories, and we want those stories to be all across Nova Scotia, everywhere. I've been everywhere from Freeport to Bay St. Lawrence talking about the Fisheries Fund in the last 10 months and everywhere in between. So we're just trying to create awareness and interest. So are the ways that you see the Atlantic Fisheries Fund advancing your priorities as a municipal unit? Like I said, end of the day, an existing fish processor or a harvester, or a shellfish farmer or another type of aquaculturalist, whatever, if they get funded, they might grow their business, they might build on, they might build a new building, they might invest their earnings back in their property, into the barn and a cottage and whatnot. And ultimately, that could have positive benefits for the municipality's revenue stream. So is there a way that you can see yourself either through devoting some of your economic development staff time? I'm happy to meet with economic development staff and give a more detailed rundown. We've had some municipal staff who have actually sat down with harvesters or processors to fill out the application, put pen to paper and navigate the system and the process. So we know that there's opportunity and challenges and industry needs and ideas that we're probably not even thinking of. And there's funding. It's just a matter of building the bridge between the two, and that's why I'm here presenting this evening.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Nothing, Warden.
My question is,
Would they, or would this strictly be under environment? The amount of plastics right now that is in our Bay of Fundy and all the oceans and the other bays, we know that 2/3 are saying are coming out of fishing. Would there be something in this, if someone was innovative enough on how to get rid of that type of plastic?
I think you were listening to one of my conversations earlier today, because we were actually having that exact discussion, to be quite honest. So
Okay.
is there a way to look at new packaging, new materials that we can use, be it biodegradable or multi-purpose?
Yes.
Or, is there ways that we can use maybe, byproducts from, clamshells or marine plants? Are there properties of those that can be converted into renewable, biodegradable type plastic material? So certainly new ways of packaging, it's an emerging topic. I've engaged with a couple manufacturers who they're equally playing up, how many boxes a minute their equipment can pack versus it uses X% less plastic than our previous type of equipment. So it's certainly a topic that we'd be more than happy to hear proposals or have discussions on with folks about new ways of packaging, bait bags or, bait storage, bait boxes, all that sort of thing. So definitely.
I just wanted to make sure that wasn't strict, because I keep listening to that commercial saying by 2050, and it terrifies me. I mean, I'm not going to be here. Well, maybe, but I doubt it. But yeah, so for me, and my other question, is it okay if I ask the second question? My other question is, you said there's a marketing pillar on the very first slide.
Yep.
So is that, again, separate again from your other pillars? So, for example, I'm going to use Gidney Fisheries, okay? So they find a new way to go into Cambodia. You would help with that type of thing?
So we have some other provincial programs that can help specific companies with marketing initiatives.
Okay.
That pillar is more from like a regional or national sectoral or association standpoint. So,
Okay.
like a species-wide approach to a new market or domestic consumption as well. Domestic market development is, equally as important. I'm not sure of the stats from Canada, but I've heard that, 90% of the seafood consumed in the U.S. is imported. But they're also exporting a bunch of seafood. So, we're equally interested in domestic marketing as we are for international marketing.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks. My contact information is on the next slide, because I suspect I have some folks behind me who may be interested in learning more about this as well. So.
Okay. The next presentation is from Gwen Wilson from the St. Mary's Bay Protectors. And can I have a motion for Gwen to come
So
forward?
moved, please.
So second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, Gwen, the floor is yours.
So, thank you, Council, for letting us appear. We very much appreciate it, and want to also greet the senior staff and support staff who are here. My name is Rick Wallace. I'm here with Gwen Wilson and Casey Melanson. We're with the St. Mary's Bay Protectors, and we're here to give a presentation and have a bit of a dialogue maybe, but certainly to give a presentation on our opposition to the Cermak finfish, or what we often call salmon farming, the proposal for St. Mary's Bay. So we'll be talking about that, and we're going to organize this presentation in 3 ways. Well, actually 5. So I'll give a little bit of background on the group and what brought us here, how we organized, and so on. Then I'm going to talk just briefly about Cermak and their proposal for St. Mary's Bay, some of the timelines, questions of engagement, and so on. Then it will be over to Gwen Wilson, who will talk about environmental concerns, some of the research and examples locally, nationally, and globally. Then Casey Melanson will talk about direct concerns from commercial fishers and, of course, the issues of tourism. Then part 5 is we'll talk about our request to council for action around this issue, as well as issues of disclosure and transparency, which we think are equally as essential in these discussions. And then we'll welcome any questions you may have for us. Our actual presentation, we've timed it 4 times today. It's 22 minutes. We tried to get it down to 20. I hope you'll let us have that extra 2 minutes. You will. Thank you so much. Okay. You guys, are you able to turn up the volume at all? I can speak really loud, but yes. Oh, wow, there's all sorts of people on your side, too. No wonder. Yeah, they are. Right. Can we move people a little bit? You guys want to move in the room?
Yes, that's right.
So it's this one. If you
All right.
Thank you.
All right, great. Bill Lucas, who's an audio technician, has just told me what to do properly. All right, let us go ahead then. First, a little bit about who we are. We have called ourselves St. Mary's Bay Protectors, and we're a group of community organizations, citizens, lobster fishers, people involved in the fishing industry, business owners, and we're concerned in a general way about the economic prosperity, social well-being, and environmental sustainability of our coastal resources, and especially a natural and healthy St. Mary's Bay. So what prompted us to organize as communities? Well, when we first started to hear about this process, this application by Cermak Fisheries, or Aquaculture rather, to operate open net pen, or what we also call salmon farming, marine-based salmon farming, they had an application for 4 different places in the coastal areas of Nova Scotia, one of them being St. Mary's. So as a group, we dove in and learned everything we could about marine-based or marine cage, or what we also call open net salmon farming. And we did research about in our own backyard, our province, and globally. And what we discovered about this industry was shocking and unacceptable in every regard. We know that it takes time to understand the devastating impacts of what's below the surface. And if people take the time to understand, they'll agree that it's unacceptable. Simply put, although it's called salmon farms, they are not farms. They are industrial feedlots. So our goal as an organization, we know that open water fish farming facilities cannot be sustainably operated in a marine environment, and therefore demand a permanent moratorium on this kind of aquaculture, and insist that all finfish aquaculture sites be only closed containment land-based facilities. So, as a result, we call on the Nova Scotia government to immediately withdraw the current options to lease application by Cermak Canada. Further, we call upon the federal government to fulfill its promise to move all open net pen salmon farms to close containment, and we mean land-based by that, which they've agreed to do in British Columbia, but we also asked them to do the same in Atlantic Canada. There is no reason to allow it to be moved from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast with the same questionable impacts. Well, it's not questionable, it is. So this presentation really, we're really aiming to highlight what's at stake for our communities if the pending application by CERMAC is approved. And just to be clear, our concerns are environmental, economic, and community. So let me just now talk about CERMAC, who it is, what the proposal is, and just show a quick map of where it is, which you'll see up there, and then to briefly talk about engagement or lack of. So who is CERMAC Canada? CERMAC Canada is a multinational aquaculture company of Norwegian origin, who themselves are owned by Mitsubishi of Japan. They operate in Norway, Chile, British Columbia, where they have 26 open net pen salmon farms. And in early 2019, some months ago, CERMAC announced its intention to expand its fish farming operations into Nova Scotia waters. Their proposal is to operate, we don't have a set number of nets, but we know that they're looking to be able to fish farm 20,000 metric tons, which is 44 million pounds of fish along Nova Scotia coastal waters, including one of the sites being St. Mary's Bay. We believe strongly it will result in the same environmental degradation seen in their own and similar aquaculture operations from British Columbia, Newfoundland, Norway, Vietnam, and elsewhere in the world. Further, we believe it will pollute existing ecosystems, seriously undermine the current lobster, scallop, and clam industry, it will cause injury to the tourism industry. There's proven risks to wild fish species, and it wouldn't be unreasonable to assert that eventually it will imperil larger aquatic species, such as whales that thrive in our area. That's a little bit about CERMAC. What about its process? Well, it's just this quick. CERMAC, in March of 2019, CERMAC was granted an option to lease 4 marine areas around Nova Scotia. That doesn't mean that they can form a fish farm at this point. It's that they can investigate and do technical assessments of particular spaces. They then have to come back sometime before March 27th of next year and indicate whether they wish to put in a formal application, which then goes through another 8 or 9 month process. Nevertheless, within that, CERMAC has stated publicly in its application for extensions that their intent was to fully engage with Nova Scotians, fishermen, communities, governments, and the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. We believe that it's been woefully inadequate, and at no time have we been informed, and at no time have we consented to this. This has been done without our consent and without our knowledge. So I'm just going to run through a couple of just quick examples of that. In May 2019, CERMAC announced that they began collecting data in the Digby region, testing water temperatures, that they're meeting with First Nations governments and local community leaders and associations. That was May. We haven't heard from them. That was May. In July, CERMAC meets with Digby regional commercial fishermen, supposedly, and presents to regional councils, which I would assume would be yourselves. The company claims they will be launching their public engagement campaign in August. That was in July. We didn't hear anything about that. In September, CERMAC puts out a call for community information and advisory committee representatives in the Digby area. Their intention is that they're going to gauge social sentiment and as a forum for open dialogue. We didn't hear anything about this. In October, CERMAC announces they're finalizing their public engagement plans, hosting open houses, and starting with their first advisory committee, and that they will, of course, be widely advertising this on social media, in print, and radio. We didn't hear anything about this either. And lastly, not lastly, in October, CERMAC hosts a meeting in Sandy Cove with, quote, members of the lobster fishing associations and outline their particular sites. Very few lobster fishers heard about that, and they basically heard about it on the very day of. That's woefully inadequate again. And then finally, in September, CERMAC says that they're looking for more input from commercial fishermen and reconnect with fishermen, and that they're going to slow the engagement process. And they come back in the new year with a different engagement or stronger engagement. So let's be clear, it has been, in fact, a very poor engagement, if not completely absent, and we have in no way consented to any of this. So that's on CERMAC. I'm going to hand it over to Gwen Wilson, and she's going to talk about some of the environmental impacts.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Wilson, and I am a permanent resident of Sandy Cove on Digby Net. And I'm going to speak to the items listed on the slide there. Okay. Stocking hundreds of thousands of fish in small areas makes fish farms ideal and unnatural breeding grounds for sea lice, a small crustacean and a natural parasite on wild salmon. Pesticides, such as slice, are used to control sea lice infestations. However, these are also toxic to crustaceans, including lobster, prawn, crab, shrimp, and krill. Slice is applied in feed, and it is absorbed into the sea lice that are attached to the fish. The effects are also toxic to other crustaceans by affecting their skeletal buildup. It can accumulate in sediments and could become toxic to other marine life. It is approved for use in the Canadian aquaculture industry. However, Health Canada has refused to release the approval criteria for this pesticide. Other pesticides in use have also been shown to have harmful effects on lobster, prawn, crab, and shrimp. The industry has also developed a mechanical method of removing sea lice from farmed fish. However, even with the use of the hydrolyser, which essentially power washes the lice off of the fish, the sea lice problem in British Columbia could not be overcome. In Scotland, the use of the hydrolyser has also been blamed for the death of thousands of salmon. Farmed salmon spread disease to wild fish, and because they are crowded together, they are more susceptible to contagious diseases. These diseases, such as piscine reovirus, can be transmitted to other types of wild fish native to St. Mary's Bay, such as herring, mackerel, capelin, and smelt. These diseases are often lethal. Bloody effluent spewing from an underwater pipe at a farmed Atlantic salmon processing plant on East Vancouver Island has tested positive for piscine reovirus for the second time just recently. ISA, infectious salmon anemia, has been a huge problem in salmon farms on both coasts. It is a viral disease affecting fish farms, causing severe losses to infected farms. 600,000 smolts were destroyed at 2 Nova Scotia hatcheries due to ISA in February of 2018. Because many antibiotics, such as amoxicillin and ampicillin, used in aquaculture are also used in human medicine, proper monitoring of antibiotic residues in seafood is critical. Research has shown that consumers should not eat farmed fish from eastern Canada more than 3 times a year. Salmon in open net pens produce a huge amount of waste. Researchers around the world have recognized the harm from salmon farm waste and its long-term impacts on water quality, fisheries resources, and seabed ecology. Untreated sewage, including contaminated feed laced with chemicals, toxic residues, nitrogen, phosphorus, copper, zinc, diseases and parasites, flow directly into coastal waters. Tons of contaminated salmon, together with processing waste, are dumped in landfills or processed for fertilizer or animal feed. Salmon farm sewage often contains chemicals and contaminants that easily enter the food chain and accumulate as they move up it, ultimately reaching humans. Among these chemicals are copper, zinc, and other fungicides, antibiotics, pesticides, and insecticides. According to Scotland's World Wildlife Fund, salmon farms there produce nitrogen wastes equal to a human population of more than 9 million people. A typical 200,000 fish salmon farm releases nitrogen equal to 20,000 humans, phosphorus equal to 25,000 humans, and fecal matter roughly equivalent to a city of 65,000 people. The accumulation of sewage on the seafloor, under and around salmon farms, harms marine biodiversity. Effects may last several years and extend for several hundred meters away from salmon farms. Divers have found biological dead zones under salmon farms, areas on the seabed devoid of marine life. Salmon farmers must relocate their net pens on a regular basis to prevent the seabed from completely dying. Dilution cannot be assumed the solution for aquaculture pollution. Clam beaches, used by First Nations in the Broughton Archipelago, the area with the highest concentration of salmon farms in British Columbia, have been destroyed by the accumulation of black muck and sludge that has been attributed to salmon farm waste. The contaminants from salmon farms have also been linked to elevated levels of mercury in rockfish and parasites, tumors and lesions on ground fish harvested near salmon farms, impacting a traditional food source still used by coastal communities. The clam flats at the head of St. Mary's Bay could be at risk, and it was reported to me by a resident that there is an odor and sludge on the beach that was never present before salmon farms were in our bay. Massive farmed salmon deaths add to pollution. Industry-wide mortality rates in factory salmon operations range from 10% to 40%. Disease, algae bloom, and water temperatures have all been blamed. Crooked Sound in British Columbia in November 2019, 200,000 fish died from, reported from algae bloom. 2.6 million in Newfoundland this October due to warm water. We believe St. Mary's Bay waters would be warmer. Cold water kills 10,000 salmon at the Cook Fish Farm near Liverpool in March of this year. The sheer volume of dead fish can only be measured in tons. In British Columbia, for example, where factory farms produce 70,000 tons of salmon annually, an estimated 20,000 tons of dead fish have to be discarded every year. It should also be noted that when farmed salmon die or must be euthanized, the industry is compensated for these losses at a high cost to the taxpayer. Further threat to wild stocks exists because of the need to use wild fish in feed. Less fish in oceans will result. It takes between 2 to 4 kilograms of wild fish to produce 1 kilogram of salmon. Nearly 1/5 of global fisheries production is used for fish meal and fish oil production, it was found. We must also listen to the observations and acquired knowledge of our fishers. Just as we are learning to pay attention to what our Inuit are observing as regards the effects of climate change, we must pay attention to what our fishers have observed in areas where fish farming is impacting environment. This is the summary of fishermen's observations taken from a report, The Impact of Aquaculture on Commercial Fisheries, Fishermen's Local Ecological Knowledge. Environmental degradation. Aquaculture sites associated with the smell of sewage or rotten fish. Bottom around aquaculture cages is mildewed, moldy, whitish, a dead zone. Habitat loss. Loss of species habitat for lobster, scallop, and sea urchin through placement of aquaculture sites on good bottom, i.e. hard gravel substrate. Aquaculture impacts important spawning, feeding, and or other nursery grounds for commercial stocks, including herring and ground fish such as pollock. Declines of specific kelp, brown and apron, affect sea urchin roe production. Declines of rockweed affect habitat for juvenile lobster. Loss of zooplankton, krill, and other copepods. Change in predator-prey relationships. Starfish blooms observed around aquaculture sites. Whales no longer feeding so close to shore. Herring no longer driven or attracted into near-shore areas. Krill no longer washing up on beaches. Seabirds less frequently feeding on mudflats. I believe the next slide will speak for itself. And I'll now pass it along to Casey Melanson.
Hi, I'm Casey Melanson, maiden name Tid, and I grew up in Little River. I lived in Little River my whole life. I left to go to university to come back to Digby Neck to put roots down. I'm now a permanent resident of Mink Cove. I taught in Sandy Cove where I gave it my all, and now I teach in Freeport where I'm doing the same thing. My husband was fortunate enough to find a man who wanted to sell his lobster license to see it stay in the hands of someone on Digby Neck. And he, like many other people in our communities, are thriving locals in this giant industry. As you can see on our slides, District 33 and 34 alone account for 60% of all lobster caught in the entirety of Atlantic Canada. Lobster landings in our region alone of Nova Scotia in 2018 totaled just over $750 million. Lobster is Nova Scotia's most valuable seafood export. And if that doesn't demand the respect that we should be consulted when these big companies want to come in on our fishing grounds, then I don't know what we have to do. Although lobster landing values have surpassed the scallop landings, we're still the scallop capital of the world. And in 2017, scallop landings brought in just over $150 million, when our ground fishery, just in our region, and other finfish brought in $5.4 million. In total, that's just over $900 million in our region alone that we're bringing in. As Gwen spoke, we know the pesticides used to control sea lice kill lobsters. Lobster catches near the salmon cages in Port Mattoon brought lobster catches down 42%. The harmful algae blooms that are killing the salmon are brought on by poor water quality. So it's just going to increase with the more salmon farms we put in our bag. There will be direct displacement of our lobster fishermen, scallop fishermen, and ground fishermen to other areas, which is going to put stress on other healthy areas. Lights, noise, chemicals deflect big schools of fish, especially herring, which brings me to my next slide. I'd like to speak on tourism. Tourism in Nova Scotia last year generated $2.61 billion, and Digby came in at number 3 for capturing tourists in all of the Annapolis Valley in the Bay of Fundy shore. What's bringing people to Digby? Probably seafood, whales, and our natural beauty. We know that the salmon cage pesticides make our scallop shells and crustaceans, we'll say, ugly. No one wants to see a lobster on the plate and wonder why it looks the way it does. And the algae blooms, which will no doubt increase, are going to be on Mavelat Beach. They're going to be in all the beaches around, and you can't even let your dog swim in those waters. They will die. It has happened. And our next slide, there are sustainable ways to do aquaculture. If the West Coast is demanded by 2025 that all these open pen fish farms be moved on land, then why isn't Atlantic Canada doing it too? It can be sustainable. Here in Nova Scotia, Sustainable Blue in Centre Burlington is already doing it, and they're great. They're using 95 to 98% recirculated water, so it's not even a strain on freshwater resources. And now I would like to pass it over to Rick.
Thank you, Casey. So the last part of our presentation is a call to action to you, Council. And if you could go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So I've divided this into 3 sections. The first, let me just actually call it. The first is a council vote and public statement. So we call upon you, the Municipality of Digby Council, to hold a recorded public vote by council members on a resolution opposing the application, approval, and operation of any CERMAC proposal for marine-based net fish farming in St. Mary's Bay. Number 2, we call you to have this vote by the next council meeting, and that vote and resolution, which is recorded, be highlighted on the web homepage of the Municipality of Digby. Number 3, we ask and we call upon you to endorse the St. Mary's Bay Protectors Petition, which has already been signed by 3,100 people in the last 4 weeks. We ask you to endorse that and put it prominently on the homepage again of the Municipality of Digby Council. 4, and this went back to the consent issue that we talked about and engagement, we call upon council and its members themselves to hold well-publicized and public debates in our coastal communities beginning in January 2020 so that citizens of this county can be fully informed as to the implications of the CERMAC Canada application. So that's specific action we're asking for you around CERMAC. However, there are also issues of democracy and clarity and trust going on here. And this is equally important as the prior. So if you want to go to the next slide, that would be so nice. Thank you so much. Accountability. Full disclosure of any conflict of interest. Council members, all council members and municipal administrative staff must publicly and immediately declare any conflict of interest concerning CERMAC and or any other aquaculture, meaning fish farming, enterprise, business investments that they or immediate family members stand to directly or indirectly profit in any way. This pertains to current and future activities of any fish farming, land-based or marine-based. We're saying this is a standard in governance. And this is the basis of trust. We elect you all, and we need to be able to trust that decisions are being done with accountability and transparently. So, number 6, that all communications with CERMAC be publicly disclosed immediately. The council members and administrative staff immediately disclose past dealings, communications, meetings with CERMAC, and that all future communications be a matter of public record. We feel we've been kept in the dark. This is an important issue. I think that any communications with this company ought to be a matter of public record. I don't think, so, there you go. Number 7, under accountability, that there be no future support for CERMAC application or investments. Specifically, that municipal councils and support staff not facilitate in any way the business plan of CERMAC or any other agriculture, marine fish farming, enterprise, or business investment. If you could go to the next slide, please. Transparency. We want to see the immediate online publication of council minute meetings. We don't feel we should be waiting a week, a month, anything like that. In fact, subsequent to any meeting, the immediate online publication of council minutes and committee of the whole minutes, including video recordings, via a visible and easily accessible link from the Municipality of Digby web homepage. That doesn't mean going through 3 different links to get there. Number 9, finally, a 2-week advance notice of municipal meetings and agendas. Again, to make it highly visible so that people can participate and attend. So the visible online publication of council meeting dates and agendas of the council and the committee of the whole on the homepage of the Municipality of Digby. So, just to be clear, we're asking for a council vote and public statement, we're asking for accountability and conflict of interest disclosures, and we're asking for transparency. So, that concludes our presentation. We want to thank you so much for listening. And just to go back over it, because we did cover a lot. St. Mary's Bay Protectors, CERMAC, what they're doing, the environmental effects, as Lynn has outlined. Casey very passionately put the value of the existing industries that could be put at risk. And finally, I have mentioned what we want to see from council. So, it is up to you. We'd love to hear your reactions, any of your questions, any of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions from council?
I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody that came. We go months and months without one person being passionate enough to show up about many important things. So it's extremely, well, it's amazing. It's wonderful. So thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. I really want to appreciate it. There's a lot of work, and it's, there's lots of kickback when you take a strong public position, and I'm really proud of everybody here. Right on.
Councilman Manser?
I would just like to thank you for showing up here tonight, for your presentation. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Pretty much what George said. Thanks for coming, and it's good for staying.
Not only that, there's a breeding ground in St. Mary's Bay, Weymouth River, and in St. Mary's Bay for sturgeon.
Okay.
And that's, no, that wasn't mentioned, no.
Deputy Warden?
I know that for
Again, I do agree that with David, that months go by and we don't see anyone. I know this is an important issue. I know St. Mary's Bay is an important spot. It's the same as the Bay of Fundy should be. Personally, your questions, I would hope we'll be able to discuss them, but if we don't discuss them tonight, we have another meeting to go through all that. And that's a lot of information, and it's a lot of concerns and questions, which are good. never think that we don't want to be transparent. And I will tell you, under the MGA, the Municipal Government Act, if any counselor has a conflict of interest, we must declare it. It's not, will you declare it, we must declare it. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. None of us can come into a meeting, and if we have a conflict, that we must say it, and during that discussion, we must leave the room. Just so you understand the way that works. So again, thank you. It was a good presentation, and some information I didn't know, which I appreciated hearing. And I do want to ask one question. Slice.
Slice is the name, is the brand name of the particular.
So if I Google it, I just write in Slice.
Yes, you could Google Slice, pesticide, salmon farming.
Pesticide, okay. And my other question is, where did you get the information that farmed salmon in eastern Canada can only be ate 3 times a year?
There was a report, a study done on, actually it compared farmed salmon from different countries around the world and different regions of Canada. For instance, you could compare it to Norway, you could compare it to Scotland, and that was, I can send you the reference for that. I'd be happy to do that.
Would you mind?
Yep, not at all.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
On the news.
Can you provide us with that information? Okay, and your slide for tonight with the everything you had there. So I as well want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I just want to let you know that council does support a sustainable fishery, but not a fishery that's going to have a negative impact on the existing fisheries we already have. You know, you have lobster, scallop, clams. We have a number of different fisheries here, and we want to see. I guess I'm done. So anyway, so we'll be having the considerations and everything you asked for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one thing. We were given 2 letters that we were asked to deposit with you. One is from the Bay of Fundy Discovery Center. The other is from the Village of Freeport in support of what we were talking about this evening. So I will give those to you on our way out. So thank you so much for listening to us.
I work in the West Coast salmon fishery. You have no idea what's coming down the pipe. I work in these fish. I know the chum salmon, the sea lice is incredible. 25, 30 sea lice on one salmon. It's coming here too. So just to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Safe driving, everybody. Drive safely, please.
Okay. We're going to move on.
What age are we
Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from November the 12th. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of December
Second.
12th, 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jimmy, I'm sorry, I can't hear.
No, we're gonna wait. Okay, is there any unfinished business from the minutes?
No.
Any unfinished business? Councilor Manzer? Deputy Warden?
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
If there's no unfinished business, we're going to move on to the CAO report. We've got the meeting dates and reminders for the upcoming month, well, up until January 27th. Is there any conflicts?
Nope.
I don't want to have to do this, but we may have to close the door. Okay. Are there any questions to the CAO pertaining to her report?
No.
Last chance you get to ask her.
Oh, your report. Have you got any updates on the internet within the last 24 hours?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
I know we're waiting any day.
Negotiations between Develop Nova Scotia and a proponent for this area are nearing completion.
Nearing. Okay.
So there should be announcements soon.
That's your neck of the woods, right?
No, the whole municipality.
This is the one that
The big
council
one.
had approved cost sharing on.
Oh,
the
yes.
application that was.
Oh!
So hopefully there will be positive announcements soon.
Mm-hmm.
Negotiations have been back and forth, or between the company and the province, but I think right now it's back in the province hands, so.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Right on. On to the stuff.
Department reports. Any questions pertaining to the department reports?
Yeah, the dog question is always busy. The hardest $20,000 to earn on the face of the earth. That's what I think that is. Yeah, really.
Okay, if there's no questions pertaining to the department reports, we're going to move on. For tonight, there's nothing under dangerous and unsightly. We're going to move to business items, and 4.1 is request for decision, King's Transit. So,
Yeah, I move approval, I guess. I move, yeah.
read the motion if you're going to move it.
Oh, can I move,
So this would be a recommendation to council to take the motion
To approve.
I move the Council of the Municipality District to approve the award for the request for proposal KTA number 19-5, supply and deliver 3 9.75 meter transit buses to the highest score component. City view bus sales and service for 1 10.67 meter version of the vehicle proposed for a cost of $627,119.38. Net HST included with funding from the federal gas tax fund acquired by the infrastructure.
Second?
Second.
Deputy Warden?
Okay, is there any way we could have a special council meeting to get that? Because we don't need for council to the end of January.
No, I had indicated to the manager that council, committee of the whole would be making the recommendation tonight. And based on what happens tonight, I think it would be safe for him to go forward to.
Okay, because that was on Sunday he was talking. On Sunday we were talking, and that was the concern is, because if they have to wait till the end of January, the longer. Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not sure there was the timing issue because I know he had to go to all 4 councils of the 4.
And they've all been asked to do it. Yeah. So.
He hasn't indicated that was.
Well, no, but if you said that, then he's comfortable. he just wanted to make sure it was.
Any other questions? Councilor Manzer?
I thought they were going with the longer buses because of, but didn't, two are short.
No, this is 35 feet.
This is the 35-foot bus.
Yeah.
What was the other two? They're not for our.
That was a 30.
Are they the shorter bus?
I think all three are going to be 35 feet. The difference in price between the 30-foot and the 35-foot was very little difference. And not only that, the 35-foot bus is going to, it's going to be a lot better on the road for the driver.
Yeah. There's like 3 9.75 meter buses and 1 10.67 meter.
So our motion would only relate to what we're purchasing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is the longer.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. The next item is King's Transit. Again, this is with ridership, I believe, and this is Deputy Warden.
First of all, I wanted to let you know that we are taking possession of 4 of HRM's old surplus buses. 3 are 2005, and 1 is the 2002 New Flyers B40 LF. And we will be commencing moving them here which is this week coming. So you may notice additional buses. We want to let you know that. Of note, they have been driven approximately 1/3 of the kilometers to our identical unit. That says
1/3.
1/3. They said, in the words of Neil Young, rust never sleeps. We will conduct a thorough condition assessment of these units over the coming weeks, and they will be either pressed into service to replace the worst of our units if possible as a stopgap measure, or cannibalized for parts to keep ours going. So I wanted to make sure that was out there, and the other thing is, it has been put out about our free 2-week ridership. So I just wanted to let, I know it was sent out, but I thought maybe we'd have a huge group still here, and I wanted to get that out. It is free, and we were really happy over the buses. And our meeting is this coming Wednesday night. And because they changed it, they wanted it instead of the end of November into December because there was so much going on to get this stuff in. So.
And that notice is going to be posted on our Facebook site.
Oh, great. Okay.
Should this help us with our ongoing maintenance costs issue? Is that what this is about?
Yes.
Woo!
Now, I will know on Wednesday if we had to pay any amount of, I don't think there was a lot of money. I don't want to say that, though, because I'm not sure. But we will know. We just know that we were trying to get them, and we're so happy because, well, you know, what is happening with our bus.
So really expensive.
Yeah.
So will these cards go on our old bus or on new bus facilities? The cards for the old?
No, these buses are a different model and make altogether.
No, but she said that.
They're going to if we have to, we'll cannibalize.
Yeah.
With the vicinity?
With anything that we got that parts would fit.
Oh, but I thought the vicinity, you'd have to basically put them in another vicinity. I don't know.
Yeah, but he said they.
Well, you mean if they have other vicinities they're trying to keep going? So right now there's 3, they might end up with 1.
Right.
Okay.
There.
There's a good plan. Yes.
Is that?
Not the Eldorado, I don't think.
That's an Eldorado. Okay, does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, they're gonna try to keep one of the buses going until the new ones come. And in doing so, they're gonna probably steal parts or take parts off of the other 2 just to keep one going.
I asked him when he used the word cannibalize, I said, does that mean you're gonna actually try to eat them? Linda.
Anything else on that?
That's 2. Nope.
Okay.
I thought you'd like some good news.
Next thing on the agenda is correspondence, and we've had thank you from the Clare Health Center Foundation for when we were co-sponsor. We had a Nova Scotia Community College Report 2019. I believe it's in the boardroom. We've got a request to continue our membership with FCM. Nova Scotia Power upgrading to smart meters, a letter from Nova Scotia Power. We also received a letter of correspondence from the Digby Area Food Bank from Roger Tibbetts, but the letter is actually directed towards the town. So, and I did talk to the mayor about this, and he did say it was going to be on their agenda. So, and the last item was the Canada 4-H Nova Scotia. Thank you for the support that we've given them.
I have one question. Why didn't the fact that our bond along with the, for 1.5 million goes to the Digby Pond? I saw it.
It's the golf course.
Oh, it's the golf course?
The golf course is in the municipality.
I never knew that. I always thought the whole.
It's in my district.
Ah, there you go. I didn't know that.
Yes. Well, a lot of people would think it's all one, but I mean, geographically, part of it's in the municipality and part of it's in the town. There's no in-camera for tonight, so at this time, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Approved. Thank you.